Today's gospel about the healing of Simon's mother-in-law couldn't help but just think more about the Chosen episode 8. I know my altar server Ignatius has watched it, and it's an awesome episode, and it helps for us to understand why Peter would record this message, because the Gospel of Mark is pretty much a homily that Peter gave, and Mark recorded everything Peter wrote down. So it must have been very, very significant for Peter to explain the situation, the healing of his mother-in-law. So what we see is that Simon's mother-in-law was living with him and his wife. And as you see in the episode of The Chosen, this was a very tough situation for both Simon and his wife, whose name is Eden. So for Simon, she was kind of like a problem to avoid. He kind of wanted to move on. He couldn't fix her, so he just kind of like, she was a bother to him. But for Eden, his wife, it was really a burden that she was carrying, kind of a silent burden that was bringing a lot of stress to both her and her relationship with her husband, Simon. And we see this real argument in an earlier episode in which Eden calls out Simon for his lack of faith. She said, like, you weren't the man that I married. Where has your faith gone? Like, you've not been following the Lord. And she calls Simon out for not being the same man that she married. And so Simon must have felt very convicted in that moment of his wife expressing the frustration she had with her husband. And she says, maybe God will now get your attention. And we see so soon after that, like, God really got his attention after a whole night of fishing, caught nothing. And then Jesus just filled his boat with fish and called him to follow him. So Simon, when he felt that call from Jesus, he was ready to give everything. And so for him, he thought, okay, I got to leave my wife and leave my mother-in-law. I'm just leaving everything behind, don't have to do anything more with them. What's so amazing is that Jesus doesn't have that approach. And we see in episode 8 how Jesus actually enters into the house of Simon. And he's there with Eden. And there's this beautiful interaction between Eden and Jesus. Jesus calls her by name, and she's so surprised that Jesus has actually entered into her home. And then he has this beautiful dialogue with her. He affirms her for choosing Simon, affirms her goodness, and then he says these words that I've found so important, and they're 3 words that are the key for today. He says, I see you. He says these words, I see you. See, he was saying to Eden, like, I see your suffering. I see all the pains that you're going through. I see you for the struggle that you're going through trying to take care of your sick mother-in-law. I see you for the difficulty of what it would be like to be the wife of someone who's been called by Jesus to leave everything. He says, I see you in all of your sufferings. And she just felt this whole sigh of relief that all of a sudden, like, Jesus actually cared about her. See, for Eden, it was like the Messiah, she didn't understand that the Messiah could actually care about something like her mother-in-law being sick with a fever. She thought that he must have had much bigger and better things to do than to enter into her home and take care of her sick mother-in-law. But to hear these words for Eden that, I see you, I understand what it must be like, and he speaks these profound words to her. I highly encourage you to watch this episode 8, in which you see this huge sigh of relief. And then there's this really funny interaction where Jesus, he's saying, he's like, Simon's hard enough. Like, I don't want a worried Simon on the road. And so he kind of, and then you hear Eden's mother coughing, and then he's like, so I'll take care of it. And she's just like in shock that Jesus, the Messiah, is actually going to heal her mother-in-law. And it's just so beautiful to see Jesus enter into the room, just immediately heal the mother, and the mother just gets up and she's like full of life, and she just wants to serve everyone out of just this transformation that's taken place. I think for many of us, just this, how the Chosen episode kind of unpacks, provides a background to the healing of Simon's mother-in-law, can really help us to understand who Jesus is. It goes back to these three words, I see you. So many of us, I think mothers, grandmothers especially, they're at home. They feel like they bear a lot of their sufferings in silence. Day in, day out, they're just give. And it can feel like you're taking on all these sacrifices yourself, and you don't feel like you're recognized or valued or affirmed for all of the day in, day out sacrifices that you're going through. Just could be marriage troubles, could just be actually a sick mother-in-law, or your own sufferings and pains you feel like no one really understands. What I find so comforting, which the Chosen episode reveals this core truth about Jesus, just these three words, I see you. We need to realize that in our sufferings, in our pains, the struggles that we go on in our rooms when we're alone, these three words, I see you. Jesus wants to speak these words to us deep in our hearts where it actually transforms us. Like I've been trying it out today on my own, like whenever I feel like a worry comes up or some frustration, just to close my eyes and just hear these words spoken to me. Jesus looking at me, just like he did to Eden in that room, I see you. And there's just something so comforting about hearing these words, to know that the Messiah, the Savior, my best friend, the Lord of heaven and earth, is just going to say these words to me, I see you. So I just encourage for all of you to keep these three words in mind, because there's something that's transformative about them when we allow them to really seek deep down in our hearts, that in whatever struggles we're going through, Jesus speaks these words to us, I see you. He's the only one that actually knows what's going on in our lives. That's something that's so comforting for me to know, is that I have good friends, but they don't know at all, like the day in, day out struggles and the ups and downs of life. But Jesus knows. He knows it all. And sometimes if we can just stop what we're doing, close our eyes, and just hear these words, I see you, it can just reaffirm the core truth that Jesus is with us. He sees our sufferings. He sees what we're going through. And he's going to do something about it. And that's what's so beautiful about today's gospel as well, is that Jesus entered into their family struggles, and he proved he not only sees it, but he's going to do something about it. And for Eden, these three words were so transformative for her, I see you. It was all a result of her husband getting his act together and following the Lord. Eden would never have heard these words unless her husband decided to be a man and follow Christ. And this could be a struggle in many homes. And Eden had to call her husband out and say, you are not following the Lord. You need to allow God to get your attention. And Jesus saw her prayer, he saw her pain, and he answered that prayer for Eden. And so there's many men that need to step up. During this year of St. Joseph, it's a real call for men to finally make that commitment to be a man of faith for their house. And your decision to actually step up and start living out your faith could be the game changer for your wife to finally start hearing these words that she longs for from Christ. I see you. Jesus entered into the life of Simon and his wife and brought a miracle that will forever be remembered. The result of Simon's yes transformed not only the life of his wife, mother-in-law, but all of our lives. One full yes can do so much. It could be the game changer for one of your loved ones. There's some men out there that really need to finally make that yes during this year of St. Joseph. And for all those that are just bearing the sufferings in silence, it's an opportunity for these words just to sink down deep into your heart whenever you're going through the struggles. Jesus wants to speak to you today, these words once again. I see you.